Okay, the March 28, 2012 meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ansello? Here. Mr. Baroth? Here. Mr. Colby is excused. Mr. Haney? Here. Chairman Howland?
Here.
Mr. Rocco? Here. Mr. Wilcox?
Here. Okay, is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone present who is not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the February 29th, 2012 minutes of the Environment and Public Works Committee before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business.
Referral 12-126, authorized contracts with...
Moved by Legislator Ansello, seconded by Legislator Rocco. Is there any discussion? Legislator Wilcox.
Oops, through you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just ask why the one bid was withdrawn?
Through the chair, initially when bids were open, that contractor appeared to be the lowest responsible bidder. When notified, they declined the award due to a judgment error that they had in their bid.
That's fine, thank you.
Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Do contractors have the right to just, at their own volition, withdraw bids after they're submitted and open?
Through the chair, in this case, because it was a judgment error, it didn't qualify for a bid withdrawal, and so we retained the 5% bid bond.
Oh, okay, which would have amounted to $6,000 or something?
Through the chair, $6,500.
$6,500. Yeah, because if you don't have some kind of a mechanism, it could be a field day, people submitting low bids, and then when they see what everybody else has bid, if they're out of line, just saying, well, I'm out of here.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you. Through the chair, I had a couple questions. I note this is Phase 4B. Are there intended to be any further phases in the future?
Through the chair, there are none currently planned.
Thank you. And through the chair, of the previous phases 1 through 4A, I presume, were those all on time and relatively on budget?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. And finally, when did the environmental review for Phase 4B actually occur?
Through the chair, that would have occurred earlier when the project was being scoped initially for a comprehensive environmental review through seeker.
Then through the chair, am I correct to assume that there were no significant changes that might impact the environmental review that occurred however many years ago?
Through the chair, that's correct. This was an interior renovation, so no significant deviation from the original scope.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Referral passes.
Referral 12-127, authorized contracts with...
Moved by Legislator Barker, seconded by Rocco, seconded by Legislator Adair. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to inquire as to why we need somebody to provide construction management services during the design phase. I mean, I understand why on a big project, when you get into construction, frankly, is an offshoot of the Wicks law, where you have 4 primes that we unfortunately end up having to hire construction managers. But what's a construction manager going to do during the design phase?
Through the chair, their scope is involved primarily with cost estimating, scheduling, constructability, and coordination of the different trade documents. We found that their earlier involvement improves the accuracy of estimate schedules and then the ultimate constructability of the project.
So during the design phase, they really act as a monitor on the work that the engineer/architect is doing, in this case, Clark Patterson?
Through the chair, that's correct. There's direct coordination. And if we didn't have a construction manager, someone of the architecture and engineering team would perform similar tasks, but because we see value in having a construction manager for a project of this magnitude, there's definite benefit to have them early on during the design phase for continuity.
So and I take it it's your judgment that there's value to the county in spending $63,000 for these services during the design phase?
Through the chair, yes, we need these services regardless if the CM is providing them or the engineering and architecture company were to provide them. Not unlike what we did for the crime lab, we had a significant amount of this level of work helping hone our estimates, our schedule, and again, the constructability and coordination of the construction documents themselves.
So through the chair, if LaChase was not providing this, we'd be paying more money to Clark Patterson Lee to basically do it?
Through the chair, we would still need those services.
Are the fees of the designers in these cases modified? I mean, by that I mean reduced to recognize that we're paying a second entity?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you. Through the chair, I had a couple questions, and I note that the Clark Patterson Lee firm was rated the most qualified, and other consultants were considered. How many other consultants were considered, and who were they?
Through the chair, there were 7 consultants considered: Bergman Associates, DeWolf Partnership, LaBelle Associates, Popley Design Group, SWBR, and T.Y. Lin. 3 were selected to be interviewed. Obviously, Clark Patterson, LaBella, and Bergman, and Clark Patterson was selected as being the most qualified. You may also know that they recently performed the design for the Pediatric Center as well, too, and did very capably.
Thank you. And through the chair to the administration, I assume throughout this process you utilize rating sheets of some variety?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And would it be possible to have copies of those rating sheets?
Through the chair, we could provide those.
Thank you. And through the chair, I have one other question of the administration. And am I correct to assume that this renovation on this building has to do with the public safety building for use by MCC campus only? Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Does the MCC campus currently have holding cells?
Through the chair, there are representatives from MCC here who may be able to help answer some of these questions.
We actually took a tour that was available to everyone yesterday, and no, they do not have holding cells.
They do not currently have holding cells.
That's correct, isn't it?
Then, through the chair of the administration, for what reason do we require holding cells, if this is strictly speaking, only for MCC use?
Through the chair, I'll attempt to answer the question, and certainly MCC representatives can fill in. Okay. If there is an incident where they do have to bring in Brighton police, they have a location where they could hold an individual until law enforcement is there on site.
Thank you. Is this through the administration, through the chair of the administration? Is this a new standard practice for public safety on campuses across the country? I've just never heard of this before.
Through the chair, I defer to MCC on that.
Is there someone from MCC? Yes. Please come forward.
Good afternoon.
If we could have your name, please.
Hezekiah Simmons.
Thank you.
Sure. Through the chair, I would like to ask if it's a new national standard or it's a growing trend to include holding cells for public safety on college campuses.
Through the chair, I don't know if it's a trend. What we found that because we are applying to be certified by CALIA, which is a national certification organization for campus, well, for all police forces, this is a requirement of theirs. And so to meet the requirement, we feel is necessary.
So through the chair, am I correct to assume then that in the future, other campus organizations, particularly those funded by public entities, will be including similar plans as they move forward to get that accreditation?
Through the chair, only if they are interested in the accreditation.
Thank you. And through the chair, does the MCC currently have this accreditation?
No, we do not.
And through
Sorry,
the,
through the chair.
it's okay. Through the chair, through the chair. Then, if I may ask, since it is not currently held by MCC, what is the perceived value of having such accreditation?
Through the chair, one of the things that we have decided on campus is to become a lot more professional in our service to the students and the campus community. What we've learned is that through CALIA, there are certain standards that we must adhere to achieve that level of professionalism, and so that's the reason we're pursuing it.
And through the chair to the representative, am I correct to assume? Well, I won't say that. I'll ask, how often would you foresee such a facility being utilized?
Through the chair, it depends. We right now are forced to call in the Brighton Police on some occasions and in the meantime we are holding individuals either in the back seat of a car or we're holding them in an unsafe environment in a building, and so this will support that. As to the count, I can get you that. I can't tell you right now the numbers.
That's not necessary. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Further discussion? Legislator Wilcox.
Yeah, actually, I just a couple questions through you, Mr. Chairman. What types of incidents would you use these cells for? Would it be all incidents that you, I mean, I know there's a number of different types of infractions. What type of infraction would you use that holding cell for?
Through the chair, it would be only for what we would call unsafe arrest. That is someone who is can't control. We have a number of those. So it would be when we think there's an aggravated situation that would be helpful to hold this person in a cell.
Okay, and you said you have a number of those types of incidents. Do you have any idea like what type of number we're talking about?
Well, fortunately this year, because of our new processes in that we have now placed some of our peace officers into the residence halls, that number has been significantly reduced. But what we are concerned about is when the infraction occurs and we are without the necessary containment.
Mm-hmm. And how long has MCC existed?
50 years.
50 years without a holding cell.
True.
Okay. No more questions.
Legislator Roth.
Thank you. As a follow-up question, through the chair to the representative, am I correct to assume that this accreditation would hold for the MCC campuses as a whole, and it would be fulfilled simply by the presence of these holding cells on the MCC campus, main campus? It would not need to be replicated on other campuses?
That is correct.
That would be correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Legislator Haney.
As a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, do the MCC security people have police powers?
The peace officers have gone through the normal standard police training at our public safety organization on Scottsville Road. So they have all of the training, and with the president's permission, they are actually permitted to carry a weapon. However, not off campus, only on campus.
Do the MCC security people carry weapons on campus?
When authorized by the president, through the chair. When authorized by the president, yes.
How often is that, or how is that determined?
Well, through the chair, the conditions right now are that only the officers on the external portion of the campus are permitted to carry a weapon, and only those who are in an automobile.
Through the chair, what is the external portion of the campus? Is that the dorms?
No, that's through the chair. That's any thing outside of a building, anywhere on the campus. They're not permitted to bring the weapon or wear the weapon inside of the buildings.
What would happen if a security guard outside was chasing someone and they ran in, and the someone ran into a building?
Point of order. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this line of questioning's got to do with authorizing a contract with Clark Patterson.
I think I have to agree with you, President Adair. I'm sorry I did let things get offline here a little bit. Let's try and get our questions back to the referral in front of us. Any further discussion? Legislator Wilcox.
You said through you, Mr. Chairman, you said that this was for the accreditation, the cells. And so some of this construction apparently is to get that accreditation. What type of training is necessary to carry a firearm with that accreditation? Is there any training that's required?
Once again,
Point of order.
Well, I think
again,
it's
I'd like to
related.
know what I would like to know this line of questioning. What
I can
is
explain.
pertaining to the authorization of a contract that we have that we're trying to pass right now
Is that a
with
question?
Clark Patterson.
Legislator Wilcox, you're going to have to
I can
just
answer his
take a
question.
moment, and I'll decide whether it's germane. Okay, I will decide in President Adair's favor then, because personally, I don't see where it's germane
I can explain how it's
to the
germane.
topic. Well, a point of order, there is no discussion.
Okay, well, then let me follow up with another question. So accreditation is the main reason that you're building the cells, is that correct?
Through the chair, it is not the only reason.
But
It is safety and security is the primary reason.
Okay, that's far enough. Any questions that are germane to the referral? There being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. The referral passes 4-3.
Referral 12-128, authorizing intermunicipal.
Moved by President Adair, seconded by Legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney?
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Chairman, is this the last municipal treatment plant in the county?
Through the chair, no. There would be 3 remaining, Honeyway Falls, the town of Webster, and the village of Webster.
Thank you. As a follow-up question, is it hoped that the county will be taking those over? I mean, it might be your hope and not their hope. Okay, I withdraw the question.
Do we have an answer to
Well, through the chair, I guess, personally speaking, yes, it would be my hope. And seriously, though, it would be in keeping with the vision of Pure Waters to consolidate some of the smaller plants who are challenged both from a fiscal standpoint but also a regulatory standpoint to meet permits. So I think we can say that would be in the future at some point.
Legislator Baroth?
Thank you. Through the chair to the administration, just so I understand, am I correct to assume that essentially what is going to happen is there's going to be a $150,000 transfer from the county to the water district and then from them to the Scottsville? Is that correct?
Through the chair, the district would be reimbursing the village for design services associated with one component of the project.
In the amount of $150,000 approximately?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. And then through the chair of the administration, I noticed that the environmental review statement stated that there would be no significant impact. And I find this surprising since it's, I would imagine there'd be a severe positive impact by these changes. Is that not the case?
Through the chair, certainly there are very distinct environmental benefits by taking that discharge out of Owaka Creek.
Right.
But there are no significant adverse impacts is what the environmental statement is saying.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, would it be possible to have a copy of the environment impact work, data, information that led to that statement?
Through the chair, We can provide that.
Thank you.
And through the chair, I may add that that may have been completed by Scottsville, but nevertheless, we will obtain that document.
Thank you. And through the chair of the administration, do you have an approximate timeline on how long it would take to get that information?
Through the chair, before the full legislature meeting.
I had a feeling. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Opposed? Referrals passed.
Referral 12-130, authorize a contract.
Moved by legislator Ansello, seconded by legislator Rockow. Is there any discussion? Legislator Wilcox.
One of the rationales for this contract, I guess, is there's been a number of accidents
In the loop, I was wondering, do we have a number on how many accidents have occurred in the loop?
Through the chair, I don't have that information. That's information we would have to obtain from MCC, which I believe is available and could be provided.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm actually waiting for the answer to that question. I believe it said somebody from MCC might be able to answer that.
Is there anyone at this time that's prepared to answer the question as how many accidents are taking place?
Since it is a primary reason why, at least listed in the referral.
I don't see anyone raising their hands.
No?
So we'll have
So
to
no
get that
one's,
information.
I'm sorry, so no one's
to you.
prepared to answer that question. Is there any chance we might be able to get that information?
Yeah, through the chair, we can get that.
Can we get that before the day of the committee meeting?
Through the chair, we can.
Thank you.
Committee meeting or legislative meeting?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. Any further discussion? Legislator Baroff.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, what other consultants were considered for this project?
Through the chair, Bergman, C&S, Clough Harbor, Erdman Anthony, Fisher Associates, Hunt Engineers, Larson Engineers, Lyro Engineers, MRB, Perone, Passero, Popley, Design Group, and T.Y. Lin.
Okay. Quite a few. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Opposed? Referral passes.
Referral 12-133, confirmation of the appointment of the,
Moved by legislator Rocco, seconded by President Adair. Before we start discussion, I would like to give Mr. Helfer the opportunity to provide perhaps a little introduction to this referral.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege this afternoon to offer a brief introduction of Commander Michael Giardino, who, as everyone knows, the county executive is appointed as the new Director of Aviation, subject to your confirmation. As the referral letter before you states, Commander Giardino is eminently qualified and well prepared to serve as Director of Aviation. He has over 20 years of experience in aviation planning, financial management, and emergency preparedness. His appointment follows an intensive national search process that yielded over 100 applications. The opening was announced on the county's website, advertised in industry publications, and circulated to all New York State counties. An internal administrative team reviewed the over 100 applications received, and based on that review, decided to interview more than 20 applicants. After the interview process, the team forwarded its recommendations to the county executive, who selected Commander Giardino, who was by far the most outstanding candidate. Prior to his retirement from the Navy in 2011, Commander Giardino served as the Executive Officer and Deputy Commander of Naval Air Station Key West in Florida. The base supports requirements of the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, National Guard units, federal agencies, and allied forces. As the station's second in command, Commander Giardino served as the de facto Chief Operating Officer and Chief of Staff. Among his many responsibilities in this role, he worked with the same civilian regulatory agencies, namely the FAA and the Department of Homeland Security, that oversee civilian airports. Before accepting his post to Naval Air Station Key West in 2007, Commander Giardino served in Afghanistan as Chief of Air Operations and lead planner during 2 deployments over the course of 3 years, where he supervised the All North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, Allied Command Air Operations in Afghanistan. Prior to his service in Afghanistan, Commander Giardino held several positions within the Navy leadership, including serving as a top research analyst at the Pentagon and accumulating 2,500 mishap-free flight hours as a pilot over the course of 26 years. Commander Giardino was born and raised in Monroe County, graduating from Charlotte High School. He went on to study at the University of Rochester and Monroe Community College before receiving his bachelor's degree in meteorology from SUNY Brockport. Over the course of his service with the Navy, he completed 2 graduate programs, including Information Systems Management at the Naval Postgraduate School and a Master of Arts program from the Naval War College in National Security and Strategic Studies. He is a resident of the City of Rochester's Charlotte neighborhood. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to say a few words by way of introduction, and Commander Giardino would be glad to answer any questions about his qualifications that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Legislator Rocco.
I have a few questions for Mr. Giardino. Mike, you talked a little bit about, in your resume, about your financial management, and you listed a bullet there. The airport's got about a $34 million budget. What can you expand on your financial management skills?
Through the chairman, as of last night, I was the chief financial officer in the village of Brockport, responsible for executing a budget and putting together a budget of $5 million for the village, which included every municipal form of function that you could think of to include a water utility. Prior to that, as executive officer at Naval Air Station Key West, the operating budget of Naval Air Station Key West is $55 million. That does not include $10 million in civilian salaries and does not include the salaries that military folks like myself got paid also. We executed that budget within 1% every year. All department heads reported to me for execution of their budget and budget formulation. And it was in my authority to change that budget or recommend to the commanding officer and the regional commander in Jacksonville any changes to that. Along with those responsibilities came with financial management was the marketing of the base as far as every function known. I acted more as a city manager. We used to say the commanding officer would be considered the mayor of a small city, and I was the city manager executing all those functions in the budget within.
Great. Through the chairman to Mr. Giardino, you started to talk a little bit about the marketing. Can you explain a little bit of your business and marketing background as well?
Through the chairman, I, as well as having the graduate degrees, the information technology degree was more of an MBA in information systems, if you will. So studied business processes and management, but in the course of my 26-year career, I had, I'm sorry, as far as the marketing on the base, I'm sorry, back to that. The base, like I said, was a small city. So we had every type of function that you could think of, from not only the essential services of running the airfield, a port facility, family housing, which was a public-private venture. We had 1,000 beds. We ran our own hotel, if you will, that we had to upgrade and refresh and also market. We had retail facilities on the base. Franchises such as McDonald's have operated on Naval Air Station Key West. Of course, the Navy Exchange retail service, the commissary service, which is the military grocery store, Defense Commissary Agency. We ran our 2 marinas on the base. We had 3 restaurants within our own Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department, which were entities that had to turn or a profit or break even to sustain itself. So we would red flag those facilities if necessary, and they would close because the government would no longer fund them. They had to be self-sustaining, and their funds had to come from either the Navy Exchange retail service, that's where they receive their capital funding, or through their own receipts, cash receipts. We ran a child development center. We ran, as well as, 2 marinas and a 500-spot recreational vehicle park, which, of course, we had to price it right to get the customers down there. But in Key West, that wasn't hard to do.
Great. Through the chair, to Mr. Giardino, you talked about some of the business and marketing there, and I noticed some similarities between, our airport as well as a Navy base. Can you expand on any more similarities that we can relate to between the two?
Through the chair, as I said, every functionality that you could think of as far as running a small city is what I was responsible for, and the 8 department heads and 800 employees under me were responsible to the commanding officer for. Marketing, we did have to attract what our sailors and DOD personnel needed or wanted for quality of life purposes. So it was very important to us that we, on the base, and we would negotiate also with the Navy Exchange Service to get the best retailers, the best for Key West. And the example I gave, I think, during an interview was we were receiving the same clothing that was being marketed throughout the Southeast region, which our base was in, headquartered in Jacksonville, where it gets cold during the winter, but it doesn't get too cold during the winter in Key West. Therefore, we had to negotiate with the Navy Exchange to only get summertime wear, if you will, clothing items, and not get them not to deliver wool to Key West because it was not necessary. So I have experience in those areas in getting the right product to the customer at the right price.
And one last question, Mr. Chairman. I can only imagine in a Navy air base that you've had experience with preparation for emergency situations, and maybe a little background on that as well.
Through the chair, not only at the Naval Air Station where I rewrote the hurricane evacuation plan for Key West, which was the model in the Southeast region, and the Southeast region had the preponderance of hurricanes that hit the United States. Our evacuation plan and our emergency preparedness plan was the model for the rest of the nation. I also am Homeland Security ICS trained 100, 200, and 700, 800 courses complete. That is necessary for accreditation. Our facility was fully accredited, but throughout my Navy career, starting from my first tour in Norfolk back in 1988, I was the hurricane preparedness officer there, and of course 2 tours in Afghanistan. I was in the Pentagon on 9/11. I know a little bit about emergency preparedness or not having a preparedness plan. I have 110 rescues after Hurricane Floyd, after which when I went to the Naval War College I wrote a thesis about disaster preparedness, and this was before Northern Command was stood up, and my thesis was basically a model. It wasn't used as a model, and I don't know of anybody who knew of my work, but it turned out that someone else had the same idea about having a centralized command for North America and regionalizing disaster preparedness for the United States.
Thank you. I'm going to be disappointed to see you leaving the village that I represent, but I hope that but I look forward to working with you. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Any further discussion? Legislator Haney.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, that given the recent history of leadership at the airport, I think this candidate brings a breath of fresh air, and I think we all welcome him to the position and wish him well. And I think it shows the benefits of doing a nationwide search where you then can end up with a really top-flight candidate.
Thank you. it's always wonderful to find them right in our backyard here, too. So anyways, further discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you. I'd like to add my welcome, and I appreciate your spending the time with us to, let us get to know you a little bit and to talk about your qualifications. I very much enjoy the opportunity and pleased that you're here. I did like to note that I was really happy to see that you highlighted in your CV or resume that you saved $3,000. I mean, this is on a resume for a man on a 30-year career. $3,000 by reducing 126 telephone lines, and that's an attention to detail and frugality that I think is pretty admirable. Can we expect that same attention to frugality in the future in your new role?
Through the chairman, I consider myself an efficiency expert. I did do pricing models as an analyst in the Pentagon, and I have done similar work even in my 6 months at the Village of Brockport.
Thank you. And on your resume, you also noted through the chair, my apologies, I just thought of that, through the chair, that you have a lot of success with improving organizational performance and the management of scarce financial resources. Do you see any opportunities now, since you've been preparing for this position, I presume, for the past couple months, for this new role? Do you see any opportunities?
Through the chair, I look forward to the opportunity of serving the county executive and the citizens of Monroe County as the Director of Aviation, and I look forward to speaking with the staff at the airport to see if there are any opportunities in this area.
Thank you. And then finally, you mentioned in your resume, but also I did it again. Through the chair, my apologies again. You mentioned in your resume that you had 39 tenants at Key West, and one of them was a McDonald's franchise, and there's multiple restaurants. When you had civilian entities on base, were they treated, or a different set of regulations applied than non-civilian entities that were on base?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Could you clarify that a little bit?
Of course. Through the chair, of the 39 tenants at the Key West base, I presume some were civilian and some were non-civilian. Were they required to do different things in terms of record keeping, interactions with the base personnel, anything along those lines that you would then have to keep track of, or not?
Through the chair, we all, every tenant, and most of them were civilian entities on the base, adhered to all regulations, and were in compliance with the federal mandates of the base, and we were also in compliance with any state and local mandates.
Thank you. And through the chair, one final question. In a previous conversation regarding the position of airport director, I had a conversation regarding proactive versus reactive approaches to ethics and ethics training and things along those lines. Do you have any thoughts on how you prefer to operate in a proactive or a reactive fashion? And if so, what might we expect to see in the future?
I will allow Mr. Giardino to answer that question if he wishes, but I just want to warn, it seems like we're getting away from his resume, his qualifications, things like that.
Through the chair, the staff will be in full compliance with all ethics training on time, and if there's any ability of mine to be proactive in that area, I will encourage that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The referral passes. Welcome, a little prematurely perhaps. Okay, is there any unfinished business to come before the committee? There being no unfinished business, the March 28, 2012 meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting will be April 25th, 2012 at 5 p.m.